Hey everybody, Model Man Tom here. So in this session we're going to be installing the RAM. It's a relatively straightforward procedure, but there are a couple things to be aware of. This particular RAM is the latest flavor. It's Ddr3 as opposed to Ddr2, Ddr1, going back into the old days of SD-RAM, and even way before that with EDO RAM, going back almost a decade or more. Different flavors, different speeds, different sizes, that's really all it's about. One way that helps to protect you from putting the wrong kind of RAM in is that you'll notice here that we have a notch right there, and the motherboard itself also has a notch right there. So this is DDR3, so it's notched this way. DDR2 would be notched a little off, DDR1 off a little further. So this helps protect you from putting the wrong stuff in. Handling procedures: basically, if you're putting a stick of RAM in and it doesn't want to go, do not force it at all, ever, under any circumstance. You'll screw things up, the motherboard at worst, the RAM at the very least. Never touch the gold pins. Don't get oil on them. That basically inhibits the connectivity going on. If they ever get dirty or oxidized, you can use, or at least you used to be able to use, a standard white eraser, such as you find on the end of a pencil or in your art box if you have one. Works really great, or at least it used to in the old days of 10 years ago or more. So the new stuff may be a little touchy. Let me see if I have a regular stick of RAM around a second here. And here is a stick of Ddr2 RAM compared to 3. Obviously it's the same physical size, but you can see that notching is offset. The gray squares here, that's actually the thermal tape that attached this to the heatsink it used to be with. And here's a look at a stick of RAM bare. This was 2 gigs, I think. I'm pretty sure this is a burnt out stick. So 2 gigs divided by 4, 8, 16 modules total would give you the individual power of each of these. I don't know the math offhand. 2048 divided by 16. Anyone? Anyone? Alright, so that's what it is. This is also 2 gigs here, but it's DDR3, which means it's just a different speed and other particular factors. I mentioned this was attached to a heatsink. Here it is. So you can see that the heat sinks themselves come in different styles as well. This has a lot of fins on it. The newer stuff probably runs a lot hotter than this older DDR2. That's pretty much all there is for the difference, really. This will not fit in here, so you have no danger of accidentally putting the wrong stuff in at all. And let's take a look at the motherboard here real quick. Typically all motherboards, this one happens to be an exception unfortunately, there's clips on each end here. So typically on all motherboards these clips will be at both ends. This particular motherboard happens to have a bit of a crowd of components going down there. So what ASUS decided to do was simply make this a straight down drop. So what we'll do here is install this memory in a moment, but you can't just throw it in randomly. A lot of motherboards want particular combinations. Usually you can do most any sizes given any given parameters, but memory is one thing you absolutely have to look into the So looking at the motherboard user's guide, this is really a requirement. You have to look at this. All motherboards want slightly different combinations depending on the sizes of the RAM itself and how many pieces you have. So for example here, out of these 6 slots, if I only had 2, they would go into DIMM A1 and B1, which should be labeled over here, and it is. You can see the dark brown one is A2 and the light tan one is A1. And then we have B2 and B1, C2 and C1. So if I had 2 sticks of RAM, it would go in A1 and B1. I have 3 sticks of RAM, so it's going in A, B, and C1 each. Then of course if I had 4 and if I had 6, it would all be different. Another combination, this one doesn't happen to mention, but you should watch out for, is if you have different size RAM as far as 1 gigabyte, 2 gigabytes, half a gigabyte, those will want to be done in pairs. So if you had 4 slots and 3 sticks of RAM, 2 500s and 1 gig, likely the 500s would get paired up in the first 2 and the 1 gig would get in the first of the second slot, the third slot basically. And another thing to consider is that sometimes the RAM will have to add up. So 2 halves equals 1, so the 2 half a gig sticks would go in the first 2 DIMMs, and the 1 gig, which totals the first 2, would go into the third. So you couldn't put 2 1 gigs and a half a gig into the third, for example, most likely. It's just lots of little esoteric stuff. But if you are going to do the research, you do have to figure all that out and match up the RAM you want to the motherboard you have. And with that, I have 3 sticks, so they're all going into the 1 slots of A, B, and C channel. And basically all we do here is we'll match up the slot to the notch, and in this case we're simply going to press down. The latch is kicked out and gently press. This will clip in. I like to make sure by pressing it firmly. And that's all there is really to it. So let's put these other 2 in. Sorry about the wiggle here. Notch is correct. Generally speaking, you're going to want to do this evenly. You heard that click there. That means it's in. So for example, you wouldn't like slot one end in and then the other. What you want to do is line it up nice and even at both ends. Then press equally. Oop, and I did in fact put this in the wrong slot. So we'll pop that open. You can see how it kicked out. And we will lift up and simply put it into the correct slot. Doesn't matter if these latches on the open bays are open or not. And press. Locked in nice and tight. Good firm connections. That's pretty much it for installing the RAM. You can pretty much do that anytime. RAM upgrades are really common, so typically if you are installing the RAM, the motherboard is already in the case. So I just wanted to do that because having it out here on the table is convenient. And next up, what we'll do is put the motherboard in the case. Thanks for watching. See ya.